Welcome to section 2.6 day 1, solving proportions. Today we are going to solve and apply proportions. First, some terminology. So ratios are a comparison of two numbers by division. We've seen this quite a bit already this year. And a proportion is an equation stating that two ratios, or two fractions, are equal to each other. That is what we'll be looking at today. And then we have this thing called the cross product property. When we have a proportion, where we have a fraction equal to a fraction, we can cross multiply across the equal sign. And you guys have seen this before, you've done it before. If we have a over b equals c over d, so we have a fraction equal to a fraction, and the b or d is not 0, because we can't divide by 0, then we can do a cross multiply across the equal sign and take a times d equal to b times c. And then we can solve from there. That is our cross products property. So here it says, use the cross products property to solve these proportions. So we have 5 over 6 equals x over 11. We have a fraction equal to a fraction, and we can do cross multiplication. And we got 6 times x, which is 6x. We have 5 times 11, which is 55. We then divide by 6 to move and undo that multiplication. We divide, we get x equals 55 over 6. And we have solved for our variable. Next, we have more complex type fractions, but we still have a fraction equal to a fraction. There's nothing else adding or subtracting outside these fractions. So we can again do our cross products. We have 3 times x plus 3. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 3 is 9. And that equals 5 times x minus 2. 5 times x is 5x. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. We then get our variables on one side. I'm going to move my variables to the left. Going to move our constants to the right. And we get negative 2x equals negative 19. Divide by negative 2 to undo our multiplication. And we get x is 19 halves. And we have solved our proportion. Next we have numbers 3 and 4. We're going to do the same idea. We have fractions equal to fractions, so we can cross multiply. When we do this, we have 3 times 4v minus 2. 3 times 4v is 12v. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. 8v times 2 is 16v. To make this easy on myself, I'll move the v's over to the right. And we get negative 6 equals 4v. Divide by 4 to undo multiplication, and we get negative 3 halves equals v. And here we have solved for v. One other thing to remember when you're doing proportions is one of the mistakes people sometimes make is they forget there's an equal sign in there. We cannot lose the equal sign. We have to keep the equal sign there until we're done solving. So your equal sign should not disappear. It should stick around the entire time. All right, we have the same thing. We have a fraction equal to a fraction, and we are going to cross multiply. 3 times 15 is 45. 3 times negative b is negative 3b. 6 times negative 2 is negative 12. We then isolate our b by moving the 45 first, by subtracting 45 from both sides, and we get negative 3b equals to negative 57. We then divide by negative 3, and we get that b is 19. And we have solved for our variable. So there were 4 proportion problems. Solving proportions is rather simple, I think. Like I said, remember though that the equal sign sticks around, and when we do this, we get something equal to something else, and then we can solve for our variable, like we've been doing this chapter. Here's our word problem of the day. It says a bakery can make 6 dozen donuts every 21 minutes. How many donuts can the bakery make in 2 hours? couple things to be careful with in this problem. One, it says it makes 6 dozen donuts every 21 minutes, and then it says how many donuts. It doesn't ask how many dozen donuts, how many donuts. So we need to change the 6 dozen donuts to straight donuts. Well, there are 12 donuts in a dozen, so we have to take 6 times 12. So they're making 72 donuts every 21 minutes. Now we can set up a proportion. So if we're doing 72 donuts in 21 minutes, we want to find out how many donuts we make in 2 hours. This is in minutes, so we have to convert our hours into minutes. Well, 2 hours, there are 60 minutes in an hour, so that means there are 120 minutes in 2 hours. Now we have a proportion. 72 donuts over 21 minutes equals X donuts over 120 minutes. Remember to declare your variable. X stands for donuts in our 2-hour time frame. So when we do this, we are going to cross multiply. 21 times X is 21X. 72 times 120 is 8,640. We're then going to divide out 21, and we find that X is 411.4. And it keeps going a little bit longer. So that means we can make 411 donuts in 2 hours. So this one's a little tricky because you have to convert hours to minutes. You have to convert dozen to just plain donuts. Got a couple of different things you have to convert, but this is how you approach this type problem. So whenever you do word problems, make sure you understand what they're asking and what they give you, so you set up your proportion or you set up your equations correctly. So that is all for section 2.6 day 1, where we are solving proportions. And when we have a fraction equal to a fraction, that is a proportion. And when we have that, we can use the cross products property to cross multiply across the equal sign and then solve for our variable like we've been doing this chapter. Make sure you show all your work. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.